In the early 1980s, Disney was in trouble. It was not a decline that happened overnight. Walt Disney's death in 1966 exposed a key flaw in the company: its reliance on Walt Disney himself. Walt oversaw almost every aspect of the company's creative projects. Key decisions were made according to Walt's desires. Does Walt want to build a city? Sure, go ahead, that's what the company's doing now. Story decisions and animated features would sit for weeks because Walt was busy with stuff like the development of Disneyland. The company was that dependent on him. With its guiding compass gone, the Walt Disney Company stagnated. Management tried to maintain the company and Walt's image, but they failed to account for the fact that entertainment was changing and growing more sophisticated. The restrictive Hays Code was abandoned around the same time as Walt Disney's death, and the MPAA rating system was developed a little while after that. In 1984, Disney fired its CEO, Ron Miller, and appointed a new leadership team, the first with no connection to the Disney family. Michael Eisner, formerly of Paramount, was appointed CEO, while Frank Wells of Warner Brothers was installed as president. In turn, Eisner and Wells appointed Jeffrey Katzenberg as Disney's production chief. This new leadership team would implement an aggressive turnaround plan, prioritizing new lines of business and supercharging its legacy operations. The adult-focused Touchstone label, a project of Ron Miller, became a major focus during the early Eisner era. And by 1988, Disney, largely on the back of Touchstone, became the top-grossing studio in Hollywood. This was an achievement because Disney was not previously considered one of the major studios. But there's one additional, crucially important thing that Eisner Company did upon taking over that doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it should: a significant expansion into television production. Walt Disney was famously bullish on television at a time when the major studios were wary. He, of course, produced shows like the Mickey Mouse Club, Zorro, and the anthology show Disneyland, which would evolve into the wonderful world of Disney. But beyond that, Disney was historically not a major producer of television. By 1981, its offerings on the small screen had been whittled down to just the latest version of Wonderful World. At that time, it was simply called Walt Disney. That show was canceled in 1982, as the company embarked on another one of the centerpiece projects of Ron Miller.
The Disney Channel.
This was a premium network like HBO that would become the home of all of Disney's television projects going forward. A one-stop shop for all things Disney. The problem was that Disney's output and library lacked the breadth and depth to do such a thing. Marvel, Lucasfilm, and 20th Century Fox were nowhere near Disney's orbit back then, and Disney only really made movies and shows for kids and families. The company's reputation was not strong with the public or with its staff. The most recent animated film at the time of Disney Channel's launch, The Fox and the Hound, had to be delayed by 6 months when the group of animators, led by Don Bluth, resigned en masse to form their own studio. So one of Eisner's first moves would be to effectively move away from the Disney Channel. Now, they actually didn't shut the channel down, and that decision would pay great dividends more than a decade and a half later. But the programming strategy evolved from the home of Disney shows and movies to whatever family shows we can pick up on the cheap. This meant a lot of reruns, a lot of imports, and even things like this.
Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting wabbits.
Dad, I'm such a genius. Yoink! In the way! Am I a stinker? You're just
Guess who's starring in their own movie? It's the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie.
Well, ask a silly question.
And it's exclusively on the Disney Channel.
Ooh, but the good.
Look, I can't be the only one who thinks it's completely wrong for the Disney Channel, to air a Looney Tunes film. Anyway, Eisner would instead refocus on broadcast television, namely the major networks and syndication. Disney would become a major television producer for the first time in its history, and a lot of this was actually adult fare produced under either the Touchstone or Buena Vista banners. The Golden Girls became a major hit for NBC. They purchased the rights to syndicate WABC TV's morning show, and that became the nationally syndicated Live with Regis and Kathy Lee, now Live with Kelly and Mark. And they took over production of Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert's beloved movie review show in 1986. But this expansion wasn't going to ignore the actual heart of the company. You know, the Disney of it all. Under Eisner, Disney revived the anthology show and began producing a large number of specials for television. But that was just restoring the limited amount they were already producing before the Disney Channel happened. Eisner actually wanted to do something bold, something profound, something the company had never done before. Enter the world of KidVid. While Disney notably embraced the medium of television far earlier and more openly than most other studios in Hollywood, the company did so largely with live action and legacy animated content. Compilations of shorts, or some of their less notable feature animated works. Dumbo yes, Snow White no. It did not, however, produce animated content specifically for television. The Mickey Mouse Club contained very little Mickey Mouse, believe it or not. That changed with Eisner, who saw television animation as a field that Disney needed to be in. The opening of a TV animation studio was controversial in one respect, because it meant that the company would outsource its animation. This had become the industry practice for television animation. The thing that would set apart Disney's efforts would be the money it was willing to pour into its TV shows. They would have budgets large enough to keep as much of the production stateside as possible, but they would also spend top dollar to ensure the overseas animation was as good as possible. Not only did that entail contracting with studios like Tokyo Movie Shinsha, but also establishing their own overseas animation houses. There would be one key restriction, however. No legacy Disney characters were allowed to be used in these new projects. Mickey, Donald, and Goofy were deemed off limits, and the staff of this new division were forced to brainstorm new concepts. And so, fall 1985 saw the first two shows from the new Walt Disney Pictures Television Animation Group premiere on Saturday mornings: Wuzzles and the Adventures of the Gummy Bears. And while they weren't for syndication initially, at least, to really talk about the Disney afternoon, we have to start here.